Thank you, Dr. Hallowell, for agreeing to be interviewed for the Women's ADHD Empowerment Festival. It's been really, really amazing for me to have this opportunity to talk to you. For everyone, who are in the world of ADHD or who are looking for a diagnosis, you might have come across the work of Dr. Ed Hallowell, who is an American psychiatrist, speaker, author, and a podcast host. He specializes in ADHD and has authored 20 books, including the Distraction series, co-authored with Dr. John Ratey, and is the host of the Distraction podcast. Hallowell has been treating people of all ages with ADHD since 1981, and he has ADHD himself. So his approach to the condition, which uses a strength-based model, is developed with John Ratey, is based on the positive psychology, taking a more holistic view of ADHD rather than seeing it purely as a disorder with negative symptoms. So Dr. Hallowell, I was really curious, what is the basis of your strength-based approach to ADHD? Why do you see it as a neuro difference when so many people struggle with the condition?
Well, the basis is reality. I grew up with it. I have it. I've gone through all of my education with it. I also have dyslexia, so I'm twice blessed or twice challenged or whatever you want to call it. And I knew, that I was able to not only contend with this condition, but thrive with it. And I knew that it was far more rich and interesting than what is presented in the diagnostic manuals that only highlight the downside because they're all about pathology. But this condition is not all about pathology. And the term attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, all that highlights is pathology, deficit disorder. And even that is inaccurate. We don't have a deficit of attention, believe me. We have an abundance of attention. We have attention coming out our ears. Our challenge is to control it. That's the challenge. And, you say the model is we've got a Ferrari engine for a brain. We've got a rev, powerful brain, but we've got bicycle brakes. So our challenge is to control the power of our mind, this fast moving, darting here and there and everywhere kind of mind. Once we get brakes, we can win races, but without brakes, we spin out and crash. So I want to represent it as a trait, a race car brain with bicycle brakes. And once you get the brakes strengthened, you become a champion. But if you don't, you can crash and burn. So it can lead one extreme way or the other. Your life can become an ongoing disaster, or with the right kind of help, your life can become incredibly wonderful. Now, I lucked out. I didn't have a diagnosis. I'm 71 years old, so I came up before people knew about this, really. And when I was a kid, there were two diagnoses, smart and stupid. And there was one treatment, try harder. So I was lucky. I have a high IQ. I went to schools that had wonderful teachers. And so I didn't struggle, and I majored in English at Harvard College while doing pre-med. I went to medical school, did residency back at Harvard. So you would look at my story and say, he doesn't have any challenges, but I do. And see, that's what people don't understand. You can have tremendous talent, but also contend with tremendous challenges. And this is the news. I want people to understand the truth, really, that this is a condition, is an amalgamation of opposites, an amalgamation of positives and negatives. If you look at is it okay that I just keep talking?
If you want to cite more example, yes, but yeah.
Yeah. But if you look at the diagnostic criteria as outlined in the DSM-5 and all the DSM, the three hallmark symptoms of this condition are distractibility or inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. And indeed, that's how you get diagnosed. There are 9 symptoms on the axis of inattention, and then there are 9 symptoms on the axis of hyperactivity and impulsivity. And if you have 6 out of 9 symptoms on either axis, then you've got the diagnosis. It also has to be impairing your life in some way, and the symptoms have to be present in 2 or more settings. So in other words, you can't just have it at work or at home or at school. And that's how you diagnose it. People think it's much more complicated. It isn't. That's how it's diagnosed. But the problem is those three core triad, what Russ Barkley calls the holy trinity of ADD, that triad of symptoms is only negative. It's only negative. And so people who get the diagnosis and think, gosh, I've just been described as distractible, impulsive, and hyperactive, and it's a disorder, and what kind of future do I have? And my answer is your future is potentially fantastic. Some of the most famous entrepreneurial, wealthy people in the world have this condition. So if you manage it right, it can be a special power. It can be a skyrocket to the stars. So how can that be? Well, look at those three negative symptoms: distractibility, excuse me, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Excuse me. Turn each one of them on its head, and you get a positive. What's the flip side of distractibility? What's the good side of distractibility? Curiosity. Curiosity. We if we didn't care what that noise was outside, we wouldn't look. If we didn't care what's in that petri dish, we wouldn't look and discover penicillin. If we didn't care why that person is looking funny, we wouldn't inquire and discover they've got a brain tumor. I mean, we are endlessly curious. We are driven by curiosity. Our mind is like a toddler on a picnic, just going wherever curiosity leads it, with no regard for danger or authority, into the woods, into a hornet's nest, what have you. We are driven by curiosity, and we can't stand boredom. Boredom is our kryptonite. We cannot sit with boredom. Okay, so the flip side of distractibility or inattention is curiosity, which is an incredibly valuable power, one that can't be taught or bought. Okay, the next one, impulsivity. That's so bad. He's so impulsive. He's reckless. He shoots from the hip. He doesn't think before he speaks. He doesn't think before he acts. He's a loose cannon. He's a renegade. He's impulsive. Very bad. He should get more discipline. Well, let me ask you, what is creativity but impulsivity gone right? You don't plan to have a creative idea. You don't say it's 5 o'clock, time for my creative idea, and lay it like an egg. Creative ideas pop unbidden, spontaneously, impulsively. In the middle of a conversation, you'll think, oh my God, this is how to design that building. Or when you're driving along the freeway, oh my God, I just thought of how to rearrange my living room. I mean, creative ideas pop. They don't come on schedule. By definition, they are impulsive. And that's why people, who are not terribly spontaneous are not usually very creative. They're these, dull people who plod along and they never have a new idea. They love it when other people have new ideas, but, they come up on us and we're surrounded by new ideas like bananas. And they say, oh, look at all those new ideas. And we say, fine, take one. I don't know what to do with them all. And they say, oh my God, I rarely see one of these, because they so creativity is the positive side of impulsivity. And then the third quality, hyperactivity, you get to be my age, I'm 71, it's called energy. I'm really glad to have this turbo pack on. I'm really glad that I've got a lot of pizzazz and get up and go. And so, it's portrayed as completely something negative, and it's not. All of these things can be negative. Distractibility, impulsivity, hyperactivity can be negative, can be disruptive, can lead you to underachieve and not hand things in on time and go the wrong way down the wrong street. But on the other hand, they can lead to discoveries. They can lead to finding out what other people don't find out. They can lead to indefatigable effort and ongoing persistence, which we also tend to have. So all I'm saying is, when you hear this condition, and if you get diagnosed or someone who does, don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Embrace it. And once you learn to strengthen your brakes, then the sky's the limit. I tell people I don't treat disabilities. I help people unwrap their gifts. And approached properly, this condition, which can ruin your life, absolutely can, But if you learn how to get a handle on it, then it can turn you into a superstar. Another analogy I like to use, it's like, imagine Niagara Falls. Now, for those of you in England, that Niagara Falls is this huge waterfall in upstate New York, amazingly powerful waterfall. And it's just a lot of noise and mist until you build a hydroelectric plant. Well, that's like ADD. It's just a lot of noise and mist until you build a hydroelectric plant. But you build a hydroelectric plant and Niagara Falls lights up the state of New York. And ADD can light up the whole world in which you live. But you got to build that hydroelectric plant. So I'm in the brake business and in the hydroelectric plant business. I have to help people find some way to channel that amazing energy they've got, that Niagara Falls of energy that they've got, into some kind of activity that will turn it to turn turbines and light up the world in which they live. And again, that's why I love my job, because this is a very doable thing. Mm-hmm. You take someone who thinks he or she's not going anywhere. And by the way, adult women are the biggest undiagnosed group. And she'll be saying, you know, I'm just not that talented, or I had dreams, but they're not going to come true now because my time has passed and I've given up on them, and I didn't have enough discipline in school, and my mind wandered too much, and I couldn't buckle down. So I'm never going to become I'm never going to fulfill my dreams. I'm never going to start the company I wanted to start, or write the poems I wanted to write, or design the dresses I wanted to design, or act in the play I wanted to act in, or sing the songs I wanted to sing. And I say to them, no, you can. You absolutely can. And then they'll be skeptical and say, how do you know? And I'll say, because I know you. I know this condition. I know you're way smarter than other people have recognized. And you'll say, well, how can you tell? She'll say, how can you tell that? You just got to meet me. And I said, because I can tell by your vocabulary. I can tell by your appreciation of irony. I can tell by what you've noticed around my office the minute you walked in. I can tell by the questions you ask. I can even tell by your questioning me. How do I know that? You know, that takes intelligence to ask these skeptical questions. And then she'll start to cry, because she'll be recognized and seen for the first time, and she doesn't know how long. That, yes, she'll say, I've always known I had more than other people recognized, but I kept failing so much and trying so hard and getting nowhere that I decided I must be wrong. I must not have what it takes. And then I tell her, well, you do have what it takes. You just have, you have this undiagnosed condition. And if we help you with it, the diagnosis can be like getting eyeglasses. You can go from walking around and squinting all the time and trying to get through life by squinting, and suddenly you can see clearly. And the next thing you know, you do achieve your dreams. You do develop the creative activity that you've always wanted to create. And that's almost always what it is. Mm-hmm. They have some dream of some creative activity. I just went off the top of my head through a list of what they could have been. And the same thing with relationships. The relationships don't work because they pick men who are train wrecks. They go for bad boys because they like stimulation, and because they're born saviors. So the bad boys, they're exciting, and we like stimulation, but we're also born saviors. They think they can save them, and that usually doesn't work out. So in both their professional lives and their personal lives, this diagnosis can be absolutely game-changing. And that's why I love my job. I just see these, and adult women are the best to work with, because they're so willing to take the coaching, to get with it. Men are skeptical and stubborn. I think we're born with some gene that just makes us skeptical and stubborn. But women, once I lay it out for them, like I just did with you, they say, yes, that's me. Let's get going. Let's make it happen. And it's wonderful to see.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned about the negative self-thought and the inner critic, is really prevalent around women with ADHD. It's like they're almost preconditioned to do the rumination bit, which is unfortunate, but it's true. So in your new book, the ADHD 2.0, you wrote that the toggle switch between the default mode network and the tasker positive network is dysregulated in the ADHD brain, resulting in a tendency to be stuck in negative imaginations. This was a breakthrough moment for me, because I had to Google, why do I engage in so much self-doubt? And Google had the answer. It pointed me to your ADD article about DMN. So For a woman who has been so used to years of negative messaging, someone with ADHD, how can someone pluck themselves out of that overthinking loop?
Well, first of all, I'm very impressed that you read that chapter and understood it so well, because it is fairly complicated. But you're exactly right. It is, I think, the most arresting insight and of practical value in the entire book, and it's drawn from very recent neuroscience, from functional magnetic resonance imaging, where we can actually see the brain while it's thinking, and we can see what it's doing. And just as you said, when you're engaged in a creative task, when you're reading a book, painting a painting, baking a cake, whatever, your imagination is engaged constructively. What lights up is called the task positive network. You're on a positive task, the TPN, the task positive network. Now, when that shuts down, as you said, the toggle switch is different in ADD. When the TPN shuts down, what lights up is this thing called the default mode network, which I call the demon, DMN, the demon. And that's because in those of us with ADD, when our imagination, which is the DMN, when our imagination is not engaged constructively, it tends to send out this horrible stream of negative talk. Just horrible. You're ugly, you're stupid, you're a failure, you're going nowhere, no one likes you, you're disrespected, you can't do anything right, you're the stupid little girl who couldn't tie her shoes. You just pile on yourself and just beat yourself up to smithereens, and it goes on and on and on. It's like the horror movie, only the content is your life, yourself. And the thing is, it's very seductive. It draws you in. You do what I call, you feed the demon with your attention. Why would you do that? Why would you keep watching this horror movie about yourself? It's because, remember I said before, we're always looking for stimulation. Well, contentment is too bland. You don't say she was riveted in contentment, but you do say she was riveted in self-hatred, anxiety, fear, images of gloom and doom, just real negative self-talk is gripping. It's riveting. It holds your attention. And you got to understand this very simple but profound neurological fact. This is not something you want to take medication for. This is not something you can psychoanalyze yourself out of. It is the simple remedy is the one that works the best, but it's the hardest to do. Divert your attention. Stop feeding the demon. Pay attention to something else. Talk to a friend. Turn on loud music. Turn on the TV. Do 25 jumping jacks. Go for a really fast run. Play with your dog. Do a scientific experiment. Solve a complicated equation. Do something that will take your attention away from the demon. And it's simple, but it's hard to do, because we are so in the habit of mistaking the productions of the demon for the truth. We think, okay, I can take it, lay it on me, demon. And out it comes. You're a loser, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're boring. And, and you just say, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me. And, I better get used to it. And you just beat yourself up terribly. And you think it's the truth, and you're facing up to the difficult truth. It is not the truth. It's a creation of your imagination. It's your creation. It's not the truth. And you gotta just understand that fact, and then redirect your attention. Put your attention on something else. Don't feed the demon. Keep in mind that simple phrase, don't feed the demon. And by feed it, I mean give it your attention. Without your attention, it's like its air supply is choked off, it disappears. So get in the habit of not letting yourself get beaten up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in your webinars and your interviews and the books that I've listened to so far, you are a huge proponent of getting the other vitamin C, and that is the connectedness. So what does connecting with others give someone with ADHD? Is there a scientific basis?
The science behind this is profound. And it's not just for people with ADHD, it's really for all of us. We need vitamin connect. We need connection as much as we need oxygen or food. Most people don't realize this, but if you list the risk factors for early death, social isolation is right at the top. It's more dangerous than cigarette smoking. And most people don't realize that. So it's really good to connect. So what we're doing right now, even though it's over Zoom, you and I are connecting. This is good for us. We're getting like a shot of positive energy. And the horrible thing about COVID, it's separated us so much that people are just languishing with this deficit of vitamin connect. And it's worse than a deficit of ascorbic acid. The symptoms are lethargy, low-level depression, lack of productivity, lack of zest, lack of motivation. Where's my get up and go? Life is just really hangdog way of living. And it's not depression. It's well, it looks like it, but it's lack of connection. Lack of connection. We need each other. And it's been trivialized, or people are afraid of it, or they say it's kumbaya, it's too touchy-feely. We are touchy-feely. We humans are touchy-feely. We need to touch and feel. How we do it, that's up to us. If you're a standoffish kind of person, you can do it just by sitting in a room together. Two men can go fishing and not speak a single word, but they'll come back and say, man, what a great guy he is. They connected in silence. So you can connect just by being with someone, being in someone's proximity. But you do need that. If you go fishing alone, that's quite different than going fishing with someone. You don't have to talk. You don't have to expose yourself. You don't have to do anything that makes you feel awkward. But you do need, and again, women are better at this than men, because they're less afraid of connection. But you do need to allow yourself to feel vulnerable enough to open up and gain real connection. It is the single most important ingredient to pretty much everything that's good in life, from health to longevity to achievement to successful relationships to just enjoying life. Yeah. What you look forward to is some form of connection, if not with a person, with an activity, with a piece of nature, with a piece of art, with a piece of music, with a dog. I prescribe dogs. In fact, I dedicated my new book to dogs. And I said, it's no accident that God spelled backwards is dog. So dogs are the greatest purveyors of connection that we've got. But it's an absolutely vital ingredient, not just for those of us with ADHD. The reason I stress it with ADHD is that we can often feel disconnected because we don't, quote unquote, fit in. We are weird, eccentric, odd. I think British society is more tolerant of that than American society. American society is so all about conforming, but I think you Brits appreciate eccentricity better than we do. But for the person with ADD, we can feel like we're misfits. We can feel like we are not, one of the neurotypicals, and we're not. That's exactly right. But so be it. Long live us. We provide the unpredictability. We provide the spontaneity. We provide the laughter. We provide the sparkle, and the world needs us a lot. So don't be ashamed of it. Celebrate it. Be who you are. Get naked. Jump around and show the world. And because the world really needs you. Really needs you. Yeah. And all those stuffy people who hide behind their masks. I don't mean the COVID masks. I mean the masks we put on, they need you to help them come out from hiding. So another thing I really stress in the book is the power of connection. Think of your most important moments in life. They're moments of connection. They just are. So cultivate those. That's where the meaning in life resides. If you want to know where the meaning in life is, that's where it is. After I have 3 children, my wife and I have 3 children, and after we had our first child, I never spent another day wondering what the meaning of life was. All I had to do was look into my daughter's eyes, and then my son, and then my second son.
That's incredible. I think you're never alone anymore after having children.
Do you have kids, Sam?
I have 2 kids, and they're still, one is 1 and another is 6. So wow. It's tough at the moment because it's a new journey for me with ADHD.
You have is there a man with you?
Oh yes. Fortunately, I found a very patient man.
Good. So you're not doing it alone. It's tough to do it alone.
It's okay. So actually, I really relate to what you say about not fitting in, and especially for people with ADHD, I have a few people who follow my channel has asked me to ask you about how, someone with ADHD who often struggles with their careers, whether it's to find their place in the world of work, or some people who have so much to give but just don't know where or how to give it, which results in underperforming in their career. I'm just wondering if
Yeah,
you
and that's what I mean about the hydroelectric plant. That's what I mean about finding a place where you can plug in and light up. Because there are a lot of places where you plug in and nothing happens.
That's right.
You go into a job site or a career and it's a dud. You just can't do it. It's like trying to light wet firewood. So there's a chapter in my book about finding the right difficult,
Right.
where I have some assessments where you can sort of, take a inventory of your talents, your interests, and it usually comes back to two elements. Whatever the thing is, it's got to be difficult, because if it's not difficult, we get bored with it, and it's got to matter to us. If it doesn't matter to us, we won't feel motivated. So that combination of something that's challenging and matters to us. Now, in my case, writing that's my right difficult, no pun intended. Writing is very challenging. It's very difficult. It's never as good as I want it to be. But for some strange reason, it really matters to me. I'm cursed with the desire to write. And, if I don't have a book going, I get depressed. I'm like a cow. I need to be milked. So I need to have my stuff expressed on a daily or every other day basis. And when I do get milked, when I do create something, then I feel good. I feel fulfilled, even though the product is never as good as I want it to be. It's good enough that I can feel pleasure. And for most of us with ADD, that's what we need. We need to find our right difficult, find some activity that is both challenging and matters to us a lot. And when those two come together, we'll just work our asses off. I mean, the most common example is a startup company. And you find it, and these people that just work. They'll do anything, to make that company grow. And that's, in their case, they're right difficult. Now, what happens is, once you find that, success and failure suddenly don't matter nearly as much. But what matters is you found a game you love to play, and it's the love of the game that comes to matter. So, some of my books do well, some of my books don't do well. That doesn't matter. I'm on to the next book, and it's like the line that's on the tunnel coming out of Wimbledon from Kipling's poem, if you can look at triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're winning and losing are imposters. What matters is the love of the game. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but if you love the game, you've won. You found something in life that you love to do until life ends and you move on to the next world. So the love of the game is as important as the love of a person.
Sure.
I love my wife and my children and my friends dearly and deeply, but I also love the activities that, my right difficulties and writing being right at the top of that list.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting. I think you're a man with many feathers in your hat. You've done loads, and you had a podcast as well, didn't you? So
Yes, I do. But I also hasten to add, I have a dark side. I wrote a memoir, my previous book before ADHD 2.0 about, it's called Because I Come from a Crazy Family, the making of a psychiatrist. And my childhood was chaotic. I had an alcoholic, abusive stepfather, and my own true father was bipolar. And I was conceived when he was on leave from a mental hospital, and he came home and he decided he wanted to murder my mother. And she talked him into having sex instead. And that's where I came from. So it was a kind of a crazy childhood. And the result of that is I have an abiding sort of insecurity that I carry around with me. And I really rely on the kindness of others to prop me up. And that's why another reason I believe so much in connection. I by rights, they've done statistics. People who had all that I had in my childhood, 98% of us are dead by my age, or marginalized, or suicided, or drinking themselves to death, what have you. And the reason that didn't happen to me is the power of connection. But I want listeners to understand, this darkness, which many of us, if not most of us, do have. You don't have to keep it secret. You don't have to hide it as if it were something to be ashamed of. You can be very open about it. And when you're open about it, it gives permission to other people to be open about it. And the next thing you know, magic happens. It suddenly, the darkness turns to sunshine. You know, one of my old teachers used to say, never worry alone. And
Yeah.
it's magical. When you worry with someone, suddenly you're problem solving. You're not worrying anymore. So don't hide your pain. Don't hide your dark side. You know, and it's all of us have one. I have one particularly much, but there's no shame in that. And you just don't want to let it hold you back.
Yeah. I need to listen to this every time I feel that, worry yourself that all these rumination feelings. It's such a good pep talk. I'm feeling like really propped up and,
Exactly,
empowered.
exactly. Just talk to somebody and get yourself going, and you know, don't worry alone. You know, and people would say to you, "Look at you! You're this lovely, talented woman, 2 children. You've got it made, and how could you possibly have?" Well, it's just part of how we're wired, particularly with ADHD. You know, we have this great gift, but then we have this dark side, this default mode network, this imagination that can be really mean to us.
Yeah.
But now you're listening, you know what to do about it. Just don't feed that demon. Don't honor it by feeding it. Don't believe it. Don't give it a place at your table.
Yeah, that's right. So the last question that I want to ask you is, how does a woman, especially now with a lot of women has delayed ADHD diagnosis and they want to start over and create a new life in an ADHD friendly environment, how do they build upon their interests, the skills and their passion to create a lifetime of fulfillment and happiness? And those are your words, by the way.
Yes, no, absolutely. You first of all, you say, praise the Lord. I found this treasure. I have all these talents, and now I need to sort through them and build my hydroelectric plant. You know, build my strengthen my brakes, and it's usually done best in connection with a friend, with a therapist, with a colleague, with a partner. We usually do it better with somebody, but don't give yourself away. Don't let somebody else take over. Don't let somebody else exploit you. That happens too often. But let yourself work with someone to find out what you want to do. You know, I say the 2 keys are marry the right person and find the right job. Well, doesn't, you don't have to marry them, but live with, or whatever verb you want to use, with the right person, and then find your find your primary activity, or activities plural, that give you fulfillment. And you want to also make sure they generate some income. So don't work for nothing. So find something that is in your wheelhouse that someone is willing to pay you to do. And most of us with this condition are so talented. There's plenty of things that we could do. Don't make the mistake of selling yourself short, because often we let ourselves, I'm not very good, so we'll take anything that's offered to us, and that's a mistake. Um, the future is very bright for women who are listening. If you have this condition, it's a matter of unwrapping your gift, not treating your disability. It's a matter of unwrapping your gift and standing tall and being proud. And I love the fact that women are coming into their own with this. I've been trying to make this happen since I first found out that I have it back in 1981. And finally now it's coming around, so that people of all ages, but the men are catching on, but like I said, they're a little slower than the women, but they're getting there. It's a wonderful thing. So, where people who are offbeat, eccentric, different, realize, guess what? They're also incredibly talented. In fact, it's unusual to find someone who has tremendous creative talent who doesn't have either ADHD or dyslexia or bipolar disorder or major depression or substance use disorder or anxiety disorder. So it's much more common that they have one or more of those than they don't. Not to say that people who don't have those are boring and not productive, but by and large, it's those of us who are afflicted as well as gifted
Yeah.
who make the difference in the world.
That's right. I think I talk so much about ADHD that my husband is even convinced he has some ADHD traits, but he doesn't fit
Good.
the bill. So he's like really
Yeah.
annoyed. Like he wants to have that, you know? So at least you have an excuse to be overwhelmed or, you know,
Right,
all the
right,
other things
right,
that I feel.
right,
But,
right,
uh,
right.
thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this
Oh,
conversation.
Sam, it's my pleasure. I'm so thrilled you're doing this over there, and I hope people will get my book ADHD 2.0, and it's got a lot of new material in it. And I love you Brits. I majored in English in college, and it was Samuel Johnson I did my undergraduate thesis on. He was the 18th century uh, essayist, and
Mhm.
I'm convinced he had ADHD. And he really was hounded by the demon, by the DMN. If only he'd known about that.
Yeah,
In fact, he called it, he called worry, he called it a disease of the imagination. It's a great way of putting it. It's a disease of the imagination. And that's the DMN, that's the disease of the imagination. And
that's
now
right.
we know how to control it without meds, without anything like that, just redirecting your attention.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much though for your time. It has been amazing talking to you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. Stay in touch.
Thank you.